Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Balzano, publisher of R&R and the Experience Events, and welcome to the initial episode of our newest podcast and video series, Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience, a series based entirely on past, present, and future speakers, attendees, and exhibitors of the Experience Events. Joining me, of course, is the editor of R&R, the one and only Mildred Ingram, and we're so excited about our initial guest today, who is a business owner, an entrepreneur, leader, teacher, father, husband, loving husband, author, former nightclub owner, which we're going to get into a little later. But most famously, he is the founder and principal of the most trusted name for advisory services in the restoration, plumbing, HVAC, and other direct labor industries, Violand Business Management. Please welcome none other than Mr. Chuck Violand.
Michael, Mildred, hello, everybody. Nice to be here.
Yes, absolutely.
Great to have you, sir.
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
We're very excited. The real reason you're here is because you have a new book coming out next month in December,
Yep.
and we're so excited. Mildred and I both read it. We're thrilled with it. Do you want to talk a little bit about that to start?
Yeah, actually, this is my second book. Actually, my third book. The first one was on sales many years ago, but then a couple years ago, I wrote one called The Entrepreneurial Conspiracy, and that has to do with 6 entrepreneurial behaviors that frequently start out as strengths, but then as the business grows, they can become weaknesses, and how to avoid them or how to correct them or manage them if you discover that you've got them. And then this one is a totally different theme. It has to do with building successful companies with a heavy emphasis on culture and hiring.
Mm-hmm. Culture is a big theme in the book. I've read a lot. I mean, I say as two long-suffering Northeastern Ohio Browns fans, we've heard the term culture forever. We got to change the culture. And but after reading that, at first I smiled. I thought, he's exactly right. You described the business owner or the CEO as mainly being in control of the company culture, even in a small company. How can you upgrade the culture? I mean, there's one way to upgrade it, but how could you upgrade the culture if you're not in a position to upgrade the personnel, if you're not the owner, let's say?
Oh, if you're not the owner. Well, if you're not the owner, it can become very dicey. A couple of things, to keep in mind with that is depending on the position that you have within the company and depending on the personality of the owner. If you're bringing the whole cultural issue to the owner, typically it's going to go back. The issues are going to go back to him or her. And I'm going to use the masculine gender here when we're referring to business owners. In the trades, it still is mostly male. Mm-hmm. Although fortunately, we're seeing many, many more women owning businesses in the trades. But it usually goes right back to the owner. And so if you're going to take on the task of trying to improve the culture, you're going to have a heart-to-heart with the owner of the business because the culture flows from them. And if they're not willing to make the changes that are necessary to bring about the changes that you're feeling need to take place, you're going to have a tough row to hoe. The other thing to keep in mind with that, though, Mike, is many business owners, present company included, we're great with, most of us are good with new ideas, visionary kind of thing, lousy with follow through. And we get bored very quickly. Yeah. And while we might, initially go, yeah, you're right, we really do need to change this kind of thing, we're not going to be the ones that are going to be best to execute it, the things that need to take place. We have to approve them, but we're not the ones that are going to be best to execute it. And most of us don't have the patience to do it. And it will take a very long time. You do not change cultures overnight. And it can take years to change a culture in an organization. And unfortunately, I will have to say that I have seen cases where they have not been able to change the culture. And I mean, it's lousy. It's just a miserable place to be. But if the owner isn't willing to make the changes, it isn't going to happen. I don't care the position that the person is that's trying to make those changes.
I always thought I've heard many times from other people that it's the difference between being a small business and a huge corporation is trying to change culture or change anything. It's almost like trying to turn a big aircraft carrier around in a creek. Versus a ski-doo or sea-doo or something like that, and you could change whatever you want when you're the owner.
There's no question about that.
Yeah, do you find the larger the company, the harder it is to change culture as well?
Larger companies?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's more players, and depending on how old the company is, that culture has been ingrained for a long time.
Yeah.
And not only is it ingrained in the people who are working there now, but I think you can make an argument for the fact that that's why they were drawn to that company. If you're talking about a culture that is low on accountability, we don't follow up on things, we don't hold people accountable, that's a culture. And so a lot of times people hire into those kinds of companies because they don't want to be held accountable. And so all of a sudden, when you're going to try to change that to a culture of greater accountability, however you're going to define that, they may say, you know what, I'm just not sure I want to stay here. And so they end up exiting. Either they do it intentionally or they do it subconsciously, where they just count themselves out and they leave the company, or they're asked to leave the company.
Yeah.
So yep.
Mildred, you mentioned something to me earlier that you think Chuck is very interested in small businesses.
Oh, yeah. So, as he said, small businesses. You do seem very passionate about working with them. So, what exactly sparked that interest?
I have very little experience working in or with large businesses. I think the largest business I've ever worked for, when I was much younger, was the local newspaper, where I was a truck driver. I took the bundles of newspapers around to the newsboys and delivered them to them. And Mildred, we were talking earlier about working 7 days a week. That newspaper went out 7 days a week, so you had a schedule. But my job was to deliver them to them. After that, though, I've owned businesses my entire professional career, small businesses, my entire professional career. After that situation, when I was in school, I was working there. But I was in the restoration industry before. I owned a cleaning and restoration business in Cleveland before. And then, so it was just a natural progression into the cleaning and restoration industry. But over the years of working with small business owners, I have just developed a deep fondness for small business owners and them and the organizations that they're running and the people that work in those companies. And I mean, they are the backbone of our economy. Yep. And yet many times I think that they're the unsung heroes. We always hear about in the press about the big companies and laying off or hiring this many people, but it's the small businesses who just chug along day in and day out and make it happen.
Yeah.
And build, we were talking about families earlier, and building their families and building the families of the people that work within those organizations. And it's just, for me personally, and I think I can speak for most of the people here at VMA, I think that that's what we find so richly rewarding, is being able to see those improvements in people's lives through their businesses.
It is
pretty cool stuff.
The exact roots, because almost all businesses start small.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
it's the root. So makes complete
absolutely
sense.
Yeah.
We had we got to have the experience show in Las Vegas just wrapped up about a month and a half ago, and we had just had our post-show meeting, and on the survey, so 85% of the businesses, 85% of the attendees who came to the event were from businesses of 50 or less. And after talking to, and I guess that's not a surprise when you really think of it, but after talking to some people, they said, well, probably most of those are 2 people or less too. And since we've taken over this event, we've had a lot of passionate responses from a lot of people. And I think that when you really think about that, maybe explain some things. They're putting their heart and soul into this. They're the small business owners, and they just can't go to another corporation like a business. This is their life, heart and soul, right?
And every day they put it on the line. They're gambling the family groceries. They're gambling the mortgage on the fact that it's going to continue to work one more day. And it does, I have found that even as a company grows, that mentality is still in the back of many of their minds, that we've got to make it happen today. And that's a pretty cool thing.
That is a cool thing. That's great. It's great to be around so many entrepreneurial people like that. It leads me to one thing I noticed that a couple of paragraphs and sections in your book, we talked about the short ladder concept. I think Mr. Hall, our friend Tim, you mentioned, came up with that, but
Mr. Hall did come up with that term. I love it.
I think it's great. I should let you explain what that means. And in fact, I will. Why don't you go ahead and explain that?
The short ladder really has to do with just the fact that if you look at a large corporation, and many people who work at large corporations look at climbing the corporate ladder, and there are a lot of rungs on that ladder. Mm-hmm. And then you go to a small business, and if you've got 3 rungs on that ladder, that's a lot of rungs in a small business. And so from a technical perspective, in terms of growing within that organization, there just aren't that many particular steps to take, keeping in mind that the owner of that business is always going to be on a rung, at least one rung higher than you. But there are a lot of other ways that you can keep people engaged in your business, even though they may not be climbing up a rung. And quite frankly, many people do not want to climb up a rung.
Yep.
They don't want the aggravation and the stress of managing people or managing processes. What they want is to be able to do their job, what fulfills them. They want to do it exceptionally well. And so that provides us with opportunities to provide those opportunities, that development for them, and to keep them with us for a long time. You know, a tool that we recommend, or the suggestion that we make to a lot of people, is to develop that career development ladder, if you want to call it that, within your own organization. And it doesn't have to mean technical training, although that's going to be part of it. But you go beyond that, and you want to take a look at the other factors that really play into how long you're going to be at the company, play into how you're going to contribute to the company, and how you're going to feel fulfilled at the company. And so you talk about things like emotional intelligence and leadership skills and character and ethics, and the values that people bring. All of those are part of development. All of those are part of a short ladder that you can keep working with people for a very long time. But I think it would be naive to think that everybody's going to stay with you forever simply because I spend a lot of time with you and we do a lot of mentoring and training. You know, they aren't, which is okay. You know, let them go on and find what fulfills them, what brings them joy. But enjoy them, and hopefully they'll be able to bring out the best in us while they're with us.
It's so refreshing to hear someone of your expertise even say something like that, even from saying that everyone doesn't want to like climb a ladder, because there is so much movement that you can do within the space that you are in. And a lot of the times people think that you can't. They think that, oh, well, you've been doing this for however many years. What's next? And what's next can still be within that same position. You can grow and innovate and all kinds of things. It was just really refreshing to hear someone.
Well, thank you. Well, culturally, as a society, I think that we're driven that way.
Right.
You know, we're especially now. You know, before it wasn't the case. Before, we were really good if we stayed with the corporation for many, many years, whether we grew or not. But now, all of a sudden, if we stay with the company for 5 years, people are asking, "What's wrong with you?
What's wrong?" Yeah. Both of those,
drive.
The perspective in general, even like that people being realistic about, oh, people aren't going to be with you forever. Because I feel like sometimes larger corporations do kind of feel like that, depending. But
we've been very fortunate here at VMA, and look, we are no paragon of perfection at all, but we've been very fortunate that many of the people at our organization have been with us for a very long time. Since I started bringing a lot of people into the organization 15, 16, 17 years ago. And we've been very blessed, and seriously, it's been good. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
You know, I was wondering, I think, you know, and slight aside, you're delving into HVAC and plumbing and all these different, but clearly restoration is the lion's share of what you do. And I was wondering why you chose restoration to start with the company.
Yeah, I owned a cleaning and restoration business in Cleveland for several years when I started Violand Management. Prior to that, though, I had hired and worked with a couple consultants who helped me gain a lot deeper understanding of how businesses are supposed to run. I thought I knew. I thought that, you know, I had been imbued with this higher level of understanding about business, and these consultants pointed out to me in pretty short order that I didn't know as much as I thought I did. And so I thought at the time, you know what, I've been very fortunate to have these folks in my life. If I can bring some of the lessons I learned from them to the rest of the industry that I was involved in, I wanted to be able to do that. And so that's a lot of what we did. Now, when I started bringing consultants in, I consulted as a single operator for 20 years before I started hiring other consultants, before I brought Scott Tackett on. But as I brought consultants on, particularly the ones who had not been in the restoration industry, they had come from other industries in other disciplines within those businesses, HR, sales and marketing, operations. When I started bringing them in and they had different life experiences, suddenly it just opened up all kinds of opportunities for us, both with our restoration clients, but also with non-restoration clients, HVAC, even moving companies, plumbing, roofing. At the end of the day, we don't deal in technical spaces. So I am not the guy to ask when it comes to a technical question. Occasionally we'll get a call here at the office from a client saying, hey, none of the consultants work from the office, so they're all remote. So they call into the office. I get the phone call. They hand the phone call to me. Hey, we've got somebody on the phone that wants to know about how to handle this in a water damage. I am not the guy to ask, okay, anymore. It's a totally different world in this industry than when I was doing it. So I'll invariably pass it along to somebody else. But we deal with the other issues, the management, the leadership, the people issues, the organizational structure, the operating issues within a business. It doesn't matter what you're doing. You've still got those issues. You've still got those things at play in your company. And so the lessons, the metric, many of the metrics go from restoration to plumbing to HVAC to roofing. Just some of the numbers change, but the people issues typically are the same. The entrepreneurial issues, certainly the same.
Yeah. So I don't want to give the goods away. So I'll just lightly touch on the next topic, but recruitment, which like we just said, people are the business. So one of the many extremely important topics of the book, obviously, is having talent that aligns with the company's culture and values, and not necessarily just focusing on their generic skill set, which we know is still important as well. But why did you feel this was something that was important to touch on?
Mildred, this is huge. I mean, the whole topic is huge, and it goes deep. And as business owners, when we're in the firefight on a daily basis, sometimes what we're looking for is just somebody to fill a seat. I mean, at the end of the day, we all chuckle at the expression "fog a mirror," and in many cases, that's really what it is. But what we have learned over the years is that when somebody doesn't work out, either because they discovered it or because we've discovered it as an owner, it doesn't have to do with technical skills. It doesn't usually have to do with how well they're doing their job. It has to do with a cultural misfit or a misalignment of values, or they're not bought into the mission of the company or where the company is going, and their behaviors don't reflect that. I'll give you a couple examples. If you look at it from an employee's perspective, and they come into an organization and they're excited and all this, but then they discover that, okay, what they were sold at the interview isn't necessarily what they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis within the organization. Whether it's an owner who might not be as respectful as they expected the owner to be, maybe not as committed to the vision that he articulated in the interview, or it might be a manager or other people in the organization that aren't living the values that people talked about, or that are not in alignment with their own values. They're going to go someplace else. Frequently, they never mention that, but they just go someplace else. You go the other direction, okay? From an owner's perspective, they're bringing somebody into the organization, and the owner has high standards. Well, maybe the person doesn't have the same high standards that they do. Maybe it's a mismatch. They can't buy into the mission, the values that the company espouses. And so what happens is it shows up in their work. And before long, they're having to dismiss them from the company. But it's usually not because they're doing a poor job. It's because the behavior is out of line with what the company is espousing. And one of our core principles of Violand, theories of Violand management, I guess principle is really what it is that performance follows behavior. Numbers follow behavior. So if I want my business to perform better, What I have to do, I need to change behavior of the people of the decisions that lead to it. So it's progression. You just go back, change the actions, change the decisions, change the thinking, change the values. And when you have those in alignment, all of a sudden you see that things are running much smoother, typically more profitably in the business, because people are in alignment. They're moving in the same direction. All the hearts are beating in good times. Did that explain that, or was that?
Oh no, that was perfect. You
great.
Absolutely explained it. Absolutely.
And one thing that intrigued me about the book, which was good, and you had some great stories about that. I think someone was hired as an engineer or something like that, in the first day that the owner said, "I'll just go make some sales calls," and shockingly, they resigned later that day. That's not why I'm here.
Yeah,
right.
That was a great story, and that's real. Yeah. Those stories are real.
Oh, no doubt.
True
We all have
story.
fun nightmares like that. But right in the preface of the book, I obviously, as an employee of a company, I love reading the sentence: clients that pay their workers the best need to perform better than the ones who insist on paying the lowest wages. And the first thing that comes to my mind is, well, they're probably loyal because of the money and they want to do it. But there's got to be more to it than that, right?
Well, there's a whole lot more to it, Mike. And I'll tell you what, and just let's go to the loyalty thing. I had somebody just recently say that they think that loyalty is dead. Loyalty to a company is dead. Is a past thing. I think in many ways I agree with that statement. I'm not sure that loyalty to a company exists anymore. I think loyalty, especially with younger workers, and I'm not picking on younger workers, I think just culturally as a society.
Yep.
I think that we're loyalty to a mission. I think we're loyal to, I think we can have loyalty to a direction that we're going, as long as we feel that we're in alignment with it. But let me go back to your comment, the question that you asked just a moment ago. Yeah, when you pay people better, and compensation is just one factor that brings people that keeps people at your organization. I'm not even going to call it the lead factor, but it is one of the factors, and you have to address it. But when you have people that stay with you, just the length of time that they're with you, they're able to get better at their jobs, perform their jobs more profitably. As they perform their jobs more profitably, and as they buy further into the culture of the company, the other people that they interact with within the company perform better, simply because you have synergy with all the people. A lot of times we don't see it because it happens so subtly over time. But when they're there for a long period of time, you get that economy of synergy that just leads to more profitability. And as you have more profitability, you can, if you choose, you can share some of that back in higher wages, in better benefits, once again, to keep or attract better people that just perpetuate this virtuous cycle as the company's moving forward. Think about it when somebody leaves your organization. If you've owned a business for any length of time, you've always had somebody that leaves your business. And you know the disruption that brings. Yep. And not only, the hiring expense and the training expense, but just the disruption to the customers that it brings to them. And the question for long loyal customers, a lot of times it plants the seed of doubt in their mind about the viability of your organization. And if you're serving them, in the back of their minds, they might be asking, well, do I need to look for another provider? And that creates doubt, and that all plays into the profitability. So let's circle around. It was a long way. Let me circle around to this again. People that pay their people the most seem to have more profitable, better companies. A million reasons why. I just articulated 3 or 4 of them. But at the end of the day, that's really what it gets down to. I think the days of thinking you can pay people less and getting commitment from them, I think they're behind us. People don't have to work anymore. Let's face it. They choose to.
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. Wholeheartedly. So. And
we're at a place where if we're serious about growing successful businesses, we need to accept that reality and decide what kind of an organization, I'll use the word culture, what kind of culture do we need to draft here, that we need to create here, that will attract and keep the best people, the right people for us.
Yep, that's true.
That's great. It's exactly right. But I'm sorry, Bill, I'm going to jump in. It just came to me. Do you know, and you may not, we can edit this out if this is like a gotcha. Do you know how many people or how many businesses the Violand, the planning retreats and all the sessions that you've helped throughout the entirety of your company, roughly?
How many
It has to
we've
be
worked with?
thousands. Has to be thousands.
Well, that we've touched. Yeah, I think if you look at how many people we've touched, how many companies we've touched, yes.
Hey.
We haven't, I'm not sure that we've had 1,000 clients yet.
Okay.
But what we consider clients. Okay. We consider a client somebody that we work with on an ongoing basis.
Okay.
Somebody who attends the retreats or attends the summit, they're not necessarily clients. They're just attending a program that we have, and we certainly enjoy having them with us. But we don't, I would not count that as a client. Now, Mike, to your point, I'd like to think that we touched them.
Yeah.
They were there for a reason.
Right.
And in some way we touched them. But yeah, that's pretty nice, pretty humbling.
I've been to a couple myself with R&R as a sponsor. We're so proud to be a sponsor of all of that. And we sit there, us and all of the vendors sit in the corners of the back of the room and just almost through osmosis learn, because we hear what's going on too. We're close enough where we could really catch it. It's just a great program. And
Thank you.
I suggest everybody go through it, because you'll be very happy if you're a business owner.
Can't hurt you.
Right.
Can't hurt you. You can just grow from it.
I jumped all over you a few minutes ago. Go ahead, Mel.
No. I was just saying it couldn't hurt you. All you can do is grow from it. And continuous growth is great. So speaking of the book, I understand that it's not necessary to read it from cover to cover, although you definitely can. But the information is also valuable being ingested in more of like a kind of like a study guide format, which I think is really amazing, because you can just kind of go back to it, and not feel like, I need to go like from page 1 to, to the end. So what are you hoping to accomplish with Forging Dynasty Business?
Yeah. Mildred, how about before I address that specific question, let me just state there is a companion book that goes with this. That was the original. It was the original document and we called it Culture Forge.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a how-to manual on developing culture and attracting people to your organization. This book is a shorter version of it, more readable version of Culture Forge. But I think what we want to accomplish with the book. Okay, at Violand Management, we've occupied a pretty privileged seat in working with other businesses. And they've been very open with us in terms of helping them with the challenges that they're facing. I'd like to think at some point that we've brought some value to them, but I can tell you for certain that we've learned a ton of lessons from them. And I think a big part of the book, the purpose for the book, is if we can share some of these lessons, which are in print in the book, with clients and help them enrich their lives, help them run more efficient and profitable businesses, and have more fun in the process with their company, then the book has done its job. If we can help people in any way, in their organizations or in their lives, then the book has done its job. And that's really what we're trying to do with it. We're also I know that internally, we're also going to look at it as our own internal study guide as we work with clients. Because now it becomes available to all the clients we work with.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great place to stop. I have to announce, thank you so much, Chuck, for being here. The reason Mr. Violand is here on this specific podcast, besides the book, is because Chuck will be the keynote speaker on day 1 of the experience coming up in Chattanooga, April 3rd to the 5th. You're going to hear him on stage April 3rd at 1:15. And man, I was a little nervous when I asked you last week for that. You're like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, oh, really, Chuck? This is great. So excited.
I was honored to be asked, Mike.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
As a bonus, we're gonna have some of Chuck's new book at the show. He'll be at the R&R booth signing copies for at least an hour or so after he talks. So we're so thrilled to have you, and so thrilled to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thanks for inviting me. You guys take care.
Oh, my pleasure. This is Trade Talks, Unlocking the Experience. We'll see you next week.